Hello Dan, thank you so much for taking some time for this interview. I have a couple of questions about your career as a woman in the business. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, and thank you for having this interview. Very happy to do so. So let me tell a little bit about myself for the people who don't know me. I'm Dan from the Netherlands, as you can tell from my accent. I joined Unilever more than 19 years ago as HR trainee, or UFLP as we call it these days. I've done a lot of different HR roles based out of the Netherlands, and in 2011 I moved to Singapore. I was based in Singapore for 2 years. I was the HR director for marketing for Southeast Asia and Australasia. And then in 2013 we moved to Australia. There I became the VP HR for Australia and New Zealand, based out of Sydney. And since the 1st of January last year, so 2017, I took on the role that I'm currently in, looking after HR for Central and Eastern Europe. So that's on the work side. On the personal side, I'm married to Jaco. Jaco and I met at Unilever. I once used to be his HR business partner. Wow. So we're a Unilever couple, but nowadays he has his own company because he's also an adventurer and a mountaineer. And we have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. The girls are 10 and 8, and Tom, our little one, he's 3. And since a few months we also have a brown Labrador puppy. So it's full on.
How old were you when you joined Unilever?
23.
I'm 23 right now, and I consider myself as a young woman who's joining the business. So if you could, what would you tell your 23-year-old self?
So what I definitely would tell myself, and what I would tell you, is that in Unilever it is really possible to have a career, to have a family, and to also have a nice life, all at the same time. The one thing that I would tell you though as well is that don't expect to necessarily build your career in a linear way. Often we think about your career always needs to go up, but especially I found as a woman, whilst also going through building up a family, that sometimes you plateau for a while and then you accelerate. So those would be my advices to myself when I was 23.
How do you manage to get support for your work-life balance?
I would say 2 things. One is every time when I have interviews for a new job, then I'm really clear on what my rules of the game are. And that might sound a little bit arrogant, but that's what I do. So to be very concrete, when I spoke to JAIME about the role that I'm currently in, I told him, I said, look, with all my previous managers, I've had the agreement that on Fridays I can work from home, because it means that I don't have time to commute, that I can be there when the kids come back from school. And it just gives me that flexibility and that connection with the family. Of course, if there's an emergency, I'm flexible to come to the office, but in principle, I would really like to work from home on Fridays. So if you hire me, then you also agree to that. And you can ask him, that's literally how we had the conversation.
Okay, I will ask him.
So when you go for an interview, when you make an agreement with your line manager, be very clear on how you would like to work. So that is trick number 1, if you like. Then the second is give flexibility and take flexibility. Now, what I mean with that is it's perfectly fine to take flexibility. If your child is sick, or if you need to pick your child up from the daycare, or if your husband is traveling and you need to be flexible, that's perfectly fine, and just don't shy away from taking that flexibility. And then equally at other times you also give flexibility. So if there is this emergency, or if something is going on and you're required to work longer hours, then also show that you can be flexible as well. And then it becomes a 2-way street from the company to you and from you to the company. And then the last, but very, very important, make sure that you deliver and that you give the best performance possible. Because in the end, I always say we are an output-focused organization. So I am not too fussed about when my team works, where they work, how they work, as long as they deliver the results. And the results are ultimately what count. Because I have seen happening where performance dropped And then the whole flexible working, part-time working was held against employees who did that. But it maybe didn't have so much to do with them working part-time, but it had to do with their actual output. So be clear on your rules of the game, give flexibility and take flexibility, and make sure that you deliver outstanding performance.
What is the biggest learning that you have from making a career as a woman in the business?
So I would say two things. If I look back at my career, and especially when I was your age, now in hindsight I realize I was quite naive actually, and I will tell you a story. I started as HR trainee in R&D, research and development, and I think after 1.5 years someone approached me whether I wanted to become HR manager in one of the factories in the Netherlands. And that was my dream job, so I was very flattered that they asked me for that role. But my line manager at the time did not want to release me. And he said, "You're only just here for 1.5 years, you cannot go to that job yet." And I was so upset that other people were deciding for me and that I did not have an opportunity to make my own decision, that I went to, at the time, the senior vice president for HR in the Netherlands. And I booked an appointment in his calendar. And I said, "Look, I don't like it that you guys decide for me, and I would like to have an opportunity to make my own decision. And if it is needed, I'm prepared to resign and to rejoin Unilever in the factory." Now, luckily for me, they took this in the right spirit, and in the end they allowed me to go to the factory. But it could have very easily ended up quite differently. So that is probably the first thing I would say to myself. To think about these things. The other thing is, what I would say to myself is, believe in yourself. When I joined, first of all, I never expected to get a job offered at Unilever, because I didn't think I was good enough to work for Unilever, but miraculously I got a job offered. But after that, I have doubted myself many times whether I was good enough for the roles that I was doing. And still sometimes today, I have these moments of uncertainty. And so what I would say to myself, but also obviously to other women in the business, believe in yourself and don't let the insecurity take over, because you are probably far better than you might believe yourself.
What is the one thing that you would have done differently?
So I reflected on that, and if I look back at my 19 years in Unilever, I realized that for the first period I have tried to figure out many things myself. So because I thought that if I would show my insecurity or my weaknesses, that was a sign of failure and a sign of weakness. So I have literally gone through a lot of reflection and learning myself without involving other people or other women. And the one thing that I would do differently, I would ask for help much earlier on in my career. For me, it changed when I got a mentor assigned. So just before I moved to Singapore, I became part of a global mentoring program, and I got a mentor assigned. And that was just eye-opening for me. There was someone I could fully trust, who was there for me to reach out to. And that has learned me to reach out for help. And it's okay, everyone has their weaknesses and their insecurities, but just ask for help, because you're not there alone.
What do you think that women could do to support each other in the business environment? By talking about the challenges that they are facing and learning from each other how they deal with those challenges, because it might actually give you ideas. Because like I just shared, you're not the only one who is dealing with those challenges, and by simply being open about it, suddenly you find out that many more women are struggling with exactly the same. If I look at my role at the moment, I have 15 mentees worldwide. So in all parts of Unilever I have some mentees. Many are female, not all of them. I'm really motivated to play that role for them. To be the person where they can, share their insecurities or can just ask for help or advice.
and I have my mentors as well at the same time.
What do you think that men can do in order to support women in the business?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I always say gender diversity is not a women's thing.
Yeah.
It's as much a men's thing as it is a women's thing. Because we can do great things in Unilever to support women to have a career and a family and so forth. But the women that work in Unilever have men who work elsewhere and vice versa. So, so it needs to be on our joint agenda.
Yeah.
Now, what I have discovered throughout the years, first I thought I'm really lucky with all the line managers that I've had, with all the business partners that I've worked with. They've always been super supportive of me, of my career, and all the balls that I had to juggle. So at some point I asked my previous chairman that I worked with in Australia why he was so supportive. And then he said, "But Dan," he said, I'm married to a very talented woman, and she sacrificed her career for my career. And although at that point in time it was the right thing for us to do as a family, I still realized that she made a sacrifice. On the other hand, he said, I have 2 daughters, and I want my daughters to be as successful as my son. And I wish them all the best that they can have in their career and in their life. And that is why, as a father and as a husband, I am so supportive of women realizing their ambitions. And then suddenly I realized, all those guys have partners who they would like to be successful as well. Many of the men have daughters, and they wish the best for their daughters as well. And I think if we all bring it together and really stimulate people to be the best they can be, in the end we will benefit from that as a company as well.
If you could give one piece of advice for young women in business, what would it be?
I always say, one of my favorite slogans is, we train people how to treat us. Now, what do I mean with that? Is that you have to be very conscious of your actions and how you train people around you how to deal with you. And I will give you an example. In Australia, when we had Tom, our little one, I was formally entitled to 6 months of maternity leave, but I ended up only taking 4.5 months. And I agreed with my bosses that the remaining 1.5 months I would take for the rest of the year on Fridays. So that meant that I was working part-time 4 days a week, and that the Friday I was off. And the reason why I did that, I wanted to show the organization that if I could work part-time at that senior level, then it would be possible for anyone in the organization to work part-time. Because I wanted to break the stigma that part-time working is only possible at more junior levels in the organization. So I wanted to make a statement, guys, ladies actually, if I can do it, then you can do it as well. So anyway, that was all agreed. And literally the first week when I came back from maternity leave, a number of senior leaders, they booked a meeting on the Friday. And they said, Dan, we really looked at all different possibilities, all opportunities, but there's no other possibility than to have this meeting on Friday. So I thought, here comes the moment of truth. Because if I now give in on my first week back after maternity leave, then I will train the people around me that I'm not taking my Friday seriously. And I will train them that if they push a little bit, that I will be flexible and I will make it work. But obviously it was very difficult because there were senior leaders who asked it and they claimed they had done everything. But I did. So I told them, I said, sorry guys, I have to say no. Because you know as well that if I now say yes and give in, then that will be used going forward. And then I'm not doing justice to my day off on the Friday. And then they said, yes, you're right, we'll find another date. So this is a small anecdote, but I truly believe that sometimes you have to be strict on what your rules of the game are to make it work. And I can give another example, because many people in the business ask me how I manage my work-life balance. And I always say, look, I have very decent hours in the office. So I arrive around 8:15, 8:30. In the morning I always have breakfast with my family and with the kids. And then I leave the office around 5, 5:15, and then I'm at home in time to have dinner with the kids again. I give them a bath, I read them a bedtime story. But then once they've gone to bed at 8, then I log back on and then I do another couple of hours of work. And I'm fine with that. But for me it means that in this way I can balance and spend precious time with my family, but also deal with the responsibilities that I have and that come with my job. So we train people how to treat us.
What do you wish to all Unilever women for International Women's Day?
So what I wish for everyone actually is I'm very passionate for every individual to be the best they can be, irrespective of gender, religion, nationality, sexual orientation, abilities. I'm very passionate because everyone has something unique to contribute. So what I would really say to all the women in our business, go for it, get the best out of yourself and be the best you can be.
Yeah. Okay, that's all the questions I had for you. Thank you so much for your time and for the interview. And from my side, I wish you all the best in your ongoing career.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.